Hi, guys. This is R.A. Sweeney here to talk to you about another passage from the book Praying with the Gospel Accounts as part of the Praying with the Bible series. Last week, we started to dig into Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount, right there in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. And so we took the first steps into that. Today, we're going to take a look at just a couple more verses where Jesus is talking about not just babbling or repeating and thinking that there's some, we need to meet a threshold for prayer, or that we need to pray in certain like prescribed ways in order to manipulate God into giving us what we want. And he's like, don't feel the need to do any of that, because God already knows what you want before you even ask. And so I likened this prayer to a couple other passages, looking forward to James, where he talks about trusting instead of doubting in our prayers, but also looking back to some of the patriarchs and kind of just the idea that they had, that when they came to God, he was someone who was trustworthy, someone that they believed that they could trust in, bringing it back to some of the early chapters of the Bible and the character that we see from God, that he's generous and he wants to share his generosity and those sorts of things. And so really all those things paint a picture that is just completely incompatible with the way that Jesus is saying that the pagans were praying, of just this, mindless repetition of, like, if I ask him enough, then maybe eventually he'll hear me and want to provide. And there's some passages that we'll look at a little later in this book too that kind of talk about some parables where Jesus addresses that too. But really, it's coming down to, when you pray, just know that God wants to give you good things, and that when you ask for good things, he wants to give those things to you. When you ask him for things that aren't good, he wants to hold those things back from you so that you aren't weighed down by those things. And so really just praying, knowing those things about God. And so you can come, and sure, you can pray, you can ask for the same thing over and over again, you can be persistent, you can babble, and you can repeat, but don't feel like you need to do those things in order to get God to do what you want him to do, because that's not his character. When you're really worried about something and you just like when you're talking to someone, you might repeat yourself a whole bunch because it's heavy on your mind. Great, do those things, but don't feel like that's what God requires in order to get him to move. So that's really what I talked about in this short little passage, and we will dig a little bit further into this block of teaching next week. Thanks.